Surely there's a portfolio of jokes that would still work on a college campus. Surely.
I would hope not. From what maybe some college campuses, the ones you read about are f***ing insane.
You've given up on an entire generation, and you don't know how to make them laugh.
I have given up on any place that doesn't even remotely attempt to believe in free speech and thinks that anything that they hear that they don't like, that they don't agree with, is violence. These people are nuts, and you should be calling them out. Somebody like you, who has standing with kids, should be not joining them.
When there's a science objectivity to it.
You're doing what parents do. You're taking the path of least resistance, and therefore hurting the kids and yourself. Parents ruin both their lives. They ruin their spoiled kids' lives, and they ruin their own lives because the kids rule the roost. So that's what you're doing on a national level.
I'm feeling more like on the porch. Get off my lawn.
Really? I feel like we're in the barbershop.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this pretty glorious clip of Piers Morgan giving Neil deGrasse Tyson an earful for refusing to acknowledge the science when it comes to trans athletes competing in sports against those of the opposite biological sex, okay? And Piers is going to basically go off on Neil deGrasse Tyson because Neil deGrasse Tyson is supposed to be a scientist, right? But people are very frustrated with him, especially over this issue, because it is clear that he's putting his ideology before science, right? Instead of being a scientist first, he's being an ideologue first, a leftist ideologue. And that is extremely frustrating to people, right? Because clearly you're going to see that Piers is going to have a problem with what Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing here when it comes to this subject of transgender athletes in sports, in which Neil basically tries to go out of his way to propose a solution that, again, is just really not practical at all. Because, again, he doesn't want to hurt feelings instead of just acknowledging the reality of the situation. So without further ado, let's get into it.
So if there's a wave of trans women who dominate the sport against other women, all those sports will become less interesting based on how we all watch sports. Even the Super Bowl here in the United States, if it's a blowout by halftime, nobody watches the second half.
Right.
We watched it for the equality of the contest. Okay, so
sounds like you agree
all
with me
I'm saying is, like you said, wait, I'm almost done. So what I see is sports is on the frontier of how to handle this frontier of people who are trans. It's on the frontier of how to resolve that. And I'm making this up now. Imagine the future of sports does not distinguish sex. It distinguishes and sorts people by hormone ratios. I'm making this up, but imagine that if that were the case. That would be interesting. You get a hormone test, you're in this range, and then you compete against other people with the same range of hormones.
That's ridiculous.
That's
Neil, that is ridiculous.
No, it's not. I'll tell you why it's not ridiculous.
You're going to give every single person in sport a hormone test.
Hold on. I used to wrestle. And wrestling, there are people who weigh, sorry, am I using pounds here, 125 pounds, right on up to 240 pounds. They don't wrestle each other. The entire sport separates people so that the contest is interesting.
Yeah.
And so the people of the same weight wrestle each other, and that is the contest.
But if Floyd
and they also separate each other by sex as well, too, which is something that Neil is just refusing to acknowledge, okay? But what he's doing here is that he's basically going out his way. Instead of just telling the truth, which is that, hey, the best thing is for us to keep the sexes separate in regards to sports, right? Which is what we've been doing for like forever, okay? No. He wants to go out of his way to propose things that are just completely and totally impractical. Like, for example, hormone tests. Well, if your hormones match up, then therefore you should be able to compete against each other. And it's like, well, first and foremost, again, that is impractical. Also, on top of that, that still doesn't solve the issue, right? Because, for example, as a biological male, it doesn't matter how much estrogen I put into my body, right? If I want to become a trans woman, okay, I'm still going to have an unfair advantage against biological women because as a result of being a biological male, born a biological male that went through puberty, okay, as a biological male, I'm still going to have significant advantages, right? I'm instantly going to become one of the strongest women in the world, right? First and foremost, okay? Just in virtue of the fact that, again, I'm a man and I've been lifting my whole life. I went through puberty as a male, so therefore I'm going to retain a lot of the advantages. I'm going to retain that extra muscle mass that I've built over time, even with injections of estrogen, right? I'm going to retain a lot of my bone density, lung capacity, all of the innate biological advantages that males have over females, I will retain even as a so-called trans woman, right? And that's why his solution is not really a solution, right? It's not really a solution at all. And it's just funny because this guy, he's jumping through hoops to not offend people instead of just being honest and being upfront and saying, well, listen, scientifically speaking, it just makes sense to keep the sexes separate in sports, and that's it, right? And instead of just acknowledging that, he wants to try to create a solution or to propose a solution that makes everybody happy. But what he doesn't realize is that everybody's not going to be happy with that, right? There's no solution that's going to make everybody happy, okay?
Mayweather. I don't know if that's how it will land.
Hang on, Neil. If Floyd Mayweather fought a woman boxer, a female woman boxer, who was the same weight division, he would annihilate her. That's why we don't let it happen. And in fact, in the Paris Olympics, the winner of one of the women's boxing competitions, one of the
Piers,
females who took her on.
About.
But my point is that I just think that, if you don't mind me saying, I say this respectfully because I love you, but it just seems to me like you've dug yourself into a slight hole on this issue, and you're trying to get out of it. And now you're suggesting slightly mad cat theories, whereas the science to me is obvious. You've already given the best argument I've heard for why we separate the sexes.
Hold on. You misquoted me in this very interview. What I said was the idea of creating categories within a sport, splitting them in the example I gave, which I just made it up, like hormone ratios, is not fundamentally weird compared to dividing wrestlers by weight.
No,
because
it is.
The only reason why you do this is to make an interesting contest.
No, Neil, you're wrong.
And so you said Floyd Mayweather fight. Hold on.
You're
you
wrong.
said Floyd Mayweather.
You're not allowing for
and
the superior male biology when it comes to lung capacity, stamina, to body mass, to muscle mass, all those things. If you just take one criteria of hormones, you're not allowing all that. I'll give an example. Caitlyn Jenner, who obviously... hang on. I'm going to finish my point. Let me finish my point. Caitlyn Jenner was an Olympic male decathlon gold medal winner. Caitlyn is a big golf fan. And when she started playing golf after she transitioned, she was allowed to play off the women's tees, which are 50 yards further than the men's tees. And she quickly realized that she was still smashing it 300 yards down, and obviously was then beating all the women that she played. So she now plays back off the male tees because her biology is that of a man. And I feel that that was the most honest way to deal with it. I also feel that if you want to have a separate category, have a trans category. Or have trans women compete against men, which is their biology. Isn't that the scientific way to resolve this?
I don't have a solution. What I started this section of the conversation by saying that how you handle trans athletes is a frontier in sports that does not yet have a full solution. And I made up an example, like maybe you could divide people by hormones. I don't know if that would work physiologically, but at the end of the day, we watch sporting events because they are competitively interesting. And so something's going to have to get resolved there, and I don't have that solution.
Wow, this is a dude thinking way too deeply about something that's not that deep, right? There is a solution. The solution is what Piers just said. Biological men compete against biological men. Biological women compete against biological women. And if trans people want to compete amongst themselves, they can. That is the solution. The problem is that the trans activists don't accept that as a solution, right? They don't accept that. They think that that is discriminatory against them if they can't compete against the opposite sex. That's the problem. Now, again, Neil here is trying to make everybody happy, but yeah, he doesn't realize that you can't make everybody happy. You just have to do what makes sense and what is actually fair, right? Sports is not about happiness. It's about fairness, okay? That's what it's about. And this guy can't even acknowledge the scientific reality, which Piers asked him to do. Can you acknowledge that this is scientifically the best way to do it? Notice how he didn't answer the question. He didn't answer the question because he's so concerned about pissing off the far left that he just refuses to acknowledge something that he's supposed to be an expert in. This guy is ruining his reputation. He really is. He's ruining his reputation as a scientist behind trying to basically mental gymnastics his way through justifying something that's not grounded in science. It's fascinating stuff. It really is.
I do.
I just tossed up hormones.
You have a trans category, or you have the trans women compete against biological men, which is what they are. And I completely respect trans rights.
That may be, that may be how it settles, but I don't know. But I'm telling you, it's a frontier without a current solution that everybody agrees to. That's all I'm telling you.
Again, everybody's never going to agree, right? It's about what the majority agrees to, and the majority agrees that, hey, we should be doing it like we've been doing it forever, right? And we should not be changing up everything to capitulate to such a small group of people who we've already said, okay, look, you should compete amongst yourselves, right? And that's fair for everybody, right? They don't want to make it fair for everybody, right? They just are thinking about them and what they want, regardless of the fairness. So there is no new frontier here, as Neil deGrasse Tyson wants to try to make it out to be. We already have a solution, okay? We already know what the solution is. It's just that you have certain individuals who refuse to accept that solution. And that's the problem, right? And we don't need to be putting needles in people's arms, especially kids, forcing them to take hormone tests to capitulate to such a small group of people who, you know, just refuse to accept the fair solution and the solution that most people already agree with.
And I started this by affirming, yes, men are faster and stronger than the average man is stronger and faster too. World-class men are faster and stronger than world-class women. Obviously, there's huge overlap when you come down the rest of the distribution.
The truth is,
but
if you had a gender-neutral Olympics, how many women, biological female women, would win gold medals if it was open to men and women? The answer is literally like they might win one or two.
I'm trying to stay above. You're creating this world that makes great clickbait.
No, I'm not. Honestly, I'm not.
People to see comment on.
No. I honestly,
yes,
I'm throwing back at you the thing you'd throw back at other people, which is science. I'm telling you that it's the scientific reality, unless you say otherwise, and I don't think you do, because you've already explained that men have a superior speed and power.
I'm not saying otherwise. I started this.
The science is clear to me.
I started this by saying it.
But the science is clear, isn't it?
And I'm saying the solution isn't clear, even if the science is. And so that's all. We can debate what could work. I think the world has to figure it out, and maybe they'll figure it out one day. And maybe it is hormone ratios. I don't know. But if it is hormone ratios and we don't compete sexes, we compete by hormones, that's a whole other interesting future of athletics. By the way, every Olympics, I pause and think to myself, which of these events can and should not be separated by sex?
Which
there
one?
Are some already that are the case. And the equestrian. The equestrian does not separate men from women.
Equestrian and shooting, I think, also is another one where if they're sitting and shooting, there's no
reason. I didn't know. Yeah. So I just figured there's some that would be the case. And we can start there and just work our way up. So yeah, it's a frontier. People are thinking about it. Top people are thinking about it. And I'm not going to be the one who will have that solution.
Yeah, I think it's a waste of time for top people to be thinking about this because it's not a real problem, right? It's not a problem. The solution is already there. You just have people that refuse to accept the solution. And therefore, people try to make it out to be this big problem that is really not, right? If we just stick to what makes sense, right? What is fair, then again, this is not a real issue. Right? This is something that they call a first world issue, right? This is first world problems, right? You say first world problems, this conversation right here, first world problem, right? This is only a problem in countries where, you know, hey, people's standard of living is very high, right? Where, you know, we don't have some of the more fundamental and basic issues of just, you know, survival, right? Like some other countries, right? If you go to these other countries, they're not having these types of conversations, right? Because they have other things to worry about. So, you know, I just find this conversation to be fascinating. I find that every time Neil tries to debate this topic, he just loses more and more credibility as a so-called scientist. And I really don't know why he is essentially ruining his own reputation behind woke ideology, but it is what it is. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.